Hey, everybody. So thank you for that. So yes, exactly what she was saying, that this is National Sewing Month. So here at Plaid, we thought we would just be really, really creative and do something that is kind of with fabric and a little bit a feel of someone who loves patterns that come on fabric and what you can do with fabric other than sew. So in honor of National Sewing Month, we're doing something just a little bit different for our Michael's paint night. Normally we paint a painting. So for anyone that's new or hasn't seen exactly what we're crafting tonight, we are making this beautiful wood round wreath, wall decor, door decor for fall. So a beautiful surface available at Michael's. And we are painting with fabric. Again, kind of in honor of National Sewing Month. We wanted to use fabric in a creative way. So all of this, for anyone that saw the pattern or the project, maybe thought everything was painted, but what we are doing is we are painting a lot of the elements, but then we're using fabric to just enhance it, to create a pattern, and just another fun way to show people how to use fabric. Okay, so with that said, welcome to tonight's class. We are always super excited to teach along with Michael's. They have so many great products and it's just so much fun to educate you guys. She mentioned it in the beginning, but Caitlin is in the studio. She will be on the chat for the entire class. If you guys have any questions, you want me to hold something up and get higher so you guys can maybe see a detail, let Caitlin know in the chat and we will get you all the information that you need to have a super successful class. I do want to say just really briefly to anyone that has joined us in the past for our Michael's paint classes, where we just paint a painting, start to finish in about an hour. We will complete this project tonight, but view the project as lessons, techniques, tips. If you don't if you use your Mod Podge and maybe it's not as dry as it should be, hold off, watch the tips, and maybe complete your project tomorrow, or just be aware of when everything is dry so that your project comes out as perfectly as it can. Okay, so the supplies that we will need tonight for our beautiful fall door decor or wall decor is this beautiful wood round. Again, everything I'm using is available at Michael's. I picked this and I love it because the natural wood is gorgeous. I hope you guys can see it and I hope yours is as gorgeous at home. So I wanted to leave some of that beautiful raw wood out on our project. So you'll need your wood round. And then you will also need this beautiful fall paisley fabric. And I always tell everybody, again, if you are just really excited about using fabric as a painting technique, as a way to create patterns, follow it, learn the tips, learn the techniques. But what I'm doing tonight can be done with any fabric out there. It can be recycled. It can be a fabric that's home decor, but this is what we're using specifically for tonight's project. All right, then you're going to need Mod Podge. I'm using matte Mod Podge, but satin, gloss, whatever finish you like best. And then we're using FolkArt acrylic paints. And the colors that you guys will need is vintage white. I've got two different greens just to have a light and a dark. I've got Thicket and Mossy Meadow. And then I've got two different kind of orange autumn coral colors, Canyon Sunset and Fire Coral. And then I've got a really beautiful yellow for fall, yellow ochre, just a little darker, warmer, a really nice yellow to bring in all the colors in this fabric. And then the basic things that you need is, of course, some scissors. I called out for a 7-piece Craftsmart brush set. If you've got that, perfect. If not, I always say a large brush for base coating, a medium brush for the flowers that we're doing tonight, and a smaller brush for the smaller elements within the flowers. And then, of course, a water basin. I've got a jar with water, always paper towels on handy, and then whatever you use as your paint palette. Palette paper, a paper plate, a ceramic plate, whatever you use. And in these hour-long classes, we kind of dry things quicker than we normally would. So I always have a blow dryer on hand. And then the last thing that you guys will need is masking tape, painter's tape, just to create a sharp line. All right, so with that said, those are all of the supplies for tonight's project. Is everyone ready to get started?
They are.
Oh. They are. All right, so here we go. So again, I said that I love the wood, so I didn't want to completely cover it up. And plus, the trend of wood is so huge right now that everything has got a wood grain to it, from furniture to frames to home decor accent pieces. So we are going to leave a little bit of the wood. So simply tape off the bottom if you want to leave just a little bit of wood and just have that not painted. If you want to go really low and have more room for floral elements, but I kind of split it in the middle, not at a perfectly straight line, but split it in the middle, kind of at an angle, just because I want, and I'll try to bring this in every now and then. I kind of wanted equal parts pattern with the flowers accenting it. I wonder if I can leave that right there, just for those who want to reference it. All right, so take that off, super, super easy. And then all we're gonna do is base coat below the line with our vintage white. I don't put that on the palette just because I know I'm doing a solid base coat. So I just squeeze that right on the surface. There's no need for sandpaper. There's no need to prep it. The wood is really great quality. So all we have to do is base coat it. You can see the coverage is amazing. FolkArt Matte Acrylic is great for so many projects. It's great for home decor accent pieces. It's of course great for traditional acrylic painting, but it's such a rich, creamy consistency. I'm gonna get a little bit more. And I'm only painting the top. I'm not going over on the edge, just because again, I want the wood and the wood on the sides. So just the top. When you only have to do one coat of a base coat of a white or an ivory or a cream, you know the paint is wonderful, because a lot of times you would need two coats, and the FolkArt Matte Acrylic is so rich and creamy and thick that you only need one coat. So just nice and even. Doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, because of course we're putting some pattern over the top of it, but you just want a nice smooth base coat. All right. So if there's no questions, once that is base coated, I am going to hit that with a blow dryer so that we can move on to all of our next techniques. All right, so you've got a beautiful base coated bottom of your, I guess, wood wreath. All right, so now for your fabric, and you need very little. I think I bought a half a yard, but I know I didn't need that much. You can see how much extra I have. So you guys can, once you make this beautiful thing for your, maybe your front door, you could do all of these same techniques on chargers for your Thanksgiving table, on frames, maybe for your a fall mantle decor that you have. So the same techniques that we're doing would work on a vase, would work on a frame, a charger, on so much more. And again, the fabric and the Mod Podge is just a great way to add pattern to so many different surfaces. And patterns are everywhere now, which I love. Wallpaper is back. And with that, like bedding that used to only be white is now patterned, and frames that used to only be solid color are patterned. So pattern is so much fun. Okay, so I've got a tip for you guys. I did not have to do it with this fabric because this fabric is, I guess at Michael's, it's probably listed as home decor fabric. So it's thicker, it's got a really tight weave. But if you love this technique and you're going to do this again in the future, a great tip if you're cutting out fabric. And again, maybe vintage fabric, maybe fabric that doesn't have such a tight weave, is on the back of your fabric. We don't have to do this for today's project, but on the back of your fabric, apply a thin coat of Mod Podge all over your design element before you cut it out. Let that dry. And what that does is if you've got a fabric that is going to spray heavily and, you know, have all of those strings just coming out as you cut it, the Mod Podge on the back dried will eliminate that completely. And it will be as easy as cutting out paper. You won't have all those loose pieces of fabric where it almost sprays the edge of your design. So that is a great tip if you craft this technique in the future with different fabrics that maybe don't have that tight of a weave. All right, but again, this is such a beautiful, thick home decor fabric that we do not have to do that for this project. All right, so all I'm going to do first, you guys, is I fell in love with this little Paisley element, and I am going to cut out, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 of those designs. And as you can see, I matched my FolkArt color to the background. So we are not having to go in there and cut out that tedious little pattern. We're just cutting out the overall elements. And the ones that aren't a full design, still cut those out because we'll use those, whether it be around the edges or up against the straight line that we just painted. So you're definitely going to need a few of these Paisley elements that are not the full design, but are just already cut in a section of the Paisley element. I think I maybe need one more. I like this one with the orange in the center. We're finally getting fall. We're in Atlanta and we kind of hold on to summer a little bit longer. But it's finally getting cool and it's exciting. And all of us are here talking about maybe we get to finally wear a long sleeve shirt or a sweater and decorate for fall. It's one of our favorite time of years. It's definitely my favorite time of year. So I'm excited. The cool weather is finally getting to us. Okay. So that is probably enough. And then all I'm going to do is bring in my surface and just kind of lay them around just to see mainly, do I have enough? I feel like I have enough. Like there's one that wasn't a full design. I'm going to actually use that to meet the line where we dipped the surface. So kind of lay those out. There's no right or wrong for your placement. and just cover your area. Like I think right here feels a little bare. So I'm going to take one more and I'm just going to chop him right off and just use a little section of him so it looks like a repeat pattern. Yeah. So lay that out as you want it. And again, if you want to use less, more, if you want to work some of the little flower elements in there, the technique is the same no matter what you do. All right. So I'm going to wash my brush out. All the acrylic paint, the FolkArt that we're using in the Mod Podge is water-based. So it dries or it washes out perfectly with just plain water. And then using the Mod Podge, I am going to base coat the back of each fabric piece. You don't need a ton. You don't need it swimming in the Mod Podge. Just enough to give a nice even coat to the back of your piece of fabric. And then I'm going to lay that on there and just make sure all the edges are pressed down. Now, when things dry, when Mod Podge dries, even when acrylic paint dries, it shrinks just the teeniest, tiniest bit. Not, you know, when you get your jeans out and they're wet and then they dry and they're a little bit snug, but then they're fine, but they just shrink the tiniest, tiniest bit. When the Mod Podge dries, it shrinks just a little. So the tip that I have for that is a lot of times people will apply the Mod Podge on the back, place their fabric, and then they'll instantly top coat it. I like to let the bottom dry, knowing it's going to shrink just the tiniest bit. Your eye won't see it. But if you apply Mod Podge to the top and the bottom at the same time as they both dry, the top layer and the bottom layer, sometimes, not usually with fabric, but sometimes for sure with paper, you get a little wrinkle that wasn't there when it was wet. And then your project's done and you're like, oh man, how'd that little tiny wrinkle get there? And that's because your top coat is shrinking a little and your bottom coat is shrinking a little bit. And so sometimes, almost not always, in fact, not often at all, but if you're a perfectionist, that is just a tip for using Mod Podge in general, is I like to apply it on the bottom or to apply whatever you're applying to your project, whether it be fabric, whether it be paper, and then I let it dry. And then once everything is dry and it's magically done that teeny tiny bit of shrinking, then I apply a top coat to complete the project. It just guarantees that you're going to have perfection when you're completing your project. And for anyone new to Mod Podge, you know, once you stick it down, it's wet for a minute, so you can pick it up, move it, reposition it. It's not a one and done, and it doesn't dry instantly. It dries really quick, but it doesn't dry so quick that you can't reposition, move around, and just make sure your placement is exactly where you want it. Oh, where'd I have him? I think I had him facing that way. And it's blending right into the background, so it looks like we hand painted these little paisleys. I love that pattern is coming back. Of course, I love the farmhouse. Everything's white. Everything's gray. I love that. And I think that's here to stay, but pattern is becoming so popular, and I do have to say I love it. The great thing about fabric is it just lays down perfectly when you're using the Mod Podge. Okay, so we have created this beautiful little pattern on the bottom dipped section. And you know what? I'm going to remove this tape. We could have removed it before or after. We don't need it for the Mod Podge, but I guess I just left it on there to give us a guide. All right, so you've got a really pretty paisley pattern that if someone just looked at that, they'd think it was painted. They don't need to know that it's a beautiful fabric pattern. All right, so Mod Podge dries quickly. Again, it's water-based, it's non-toxic. So that would dry in an hour where you can continue with the craft. I am going to hit it just for a minute with the blow dryer so that when I'm working above it, I'm not messing up any of the wet Mod Podge. Okay, so now I'm going to set that over here. I am going to get a piece of this fabric. And I love to not be wasteful because again, I think I'm going to use this to make a few other things for fall. So go in there and get what would be scraps. That is the fabric. Just the weird irregular sections from where you cut out those larger paisley patterns. And then be creative and think, what design elements within this pattern do you like the best? Of course, I love these little flowers that look, I don't know, maybe like a mum. So I'm going to cut out a few of those. And don't, for tonight's project, let me bring this back in so you guys can see it while we're sitting here cutting together. Don't go crazy. Let's see if I can hold that up. Don't go crazy making sure that absolutely every section of background is removed or cut out. See those little leaves? You can still see that ivory color. One, you're going to lose all your detail, and two, you're going to make yourself crazy. Cut out the design elements, but don't overthink the edges and the details in between. You don't need to completely eliminate that. It's still going to be a really beautiful layout. There's so many cute elements. I can't decide which ones I like this time. I'm doing a little bit different than what I did last time. I love these leaves that are kind of a gray green color. And you guys definitely know, like I'm going to cut out, a bunch to complete our project. But let's say tomorrow you look back at your project and you want so many more floral elements from the fabric. Just keep repeating all the techniques that we're doing tonight. And you can add flowers and leaves and design elements until you're super satisfied with your wall decor. I love this yellow. A mustard yellow is my favorite color for fall. Isn't that crazy? People always say, why not orange? And I say, I don't know. I like the yellow. Oh, I like him. I didn't use him last time at all. He's a great flower. Oh, look at him. I have no idea what he is, but he's pretty cute. Let's see, this big one I definitely want to use. And make sure you do different sizes. Like I've got some bigger flowers like this one I'm cutting right now, but then just some little ones because you want to mix them into the painting that we're going to do in a minute. They're almost like little areas of detail because they've got all of the little, like shading areas and highlighting and outlines, all because they're done in the fabric. So it just kind of adds almost another layer to the composition. Let's see, maybe him. I think this might be the last one. I might do one more leaf. Gosh, all of these I, for some reason, didn't use last time, and now they're my favorites. And I know all you sewers out there are saying, why am I using these giant scissors? Just because, not by choice. But you know, the great thing is it's showing how beautiful the quality of this fabric is because it's actually cutting it really, really well. You guys all have those perfect professional little tiny baby sewing scissors. I know it. I like that little leaf pattern so much. I'm going to cut one more of those. All right, that might be, again, more or less. You can add some more once you kind of get done with the painting elements, but whatever elements are your favorite. And then we'll get started on the painting. All right, my last one, I promise. Okay, so there's some fabric elements. I'm going to scoot those to the side because we're going to use those last. And now we're going to paint. So I'm going to stick those over there. All right, so now we're going to paint. So I did not provide a pattern. I try not to provide a pattern, and not because I'm trying to be mean. I promise I'm not. But I think when you guys have a pattern, then you just follow the pattern, and it's like you're coloring in a coloring book. Whereas if I don't give you a pattern, I just think that you learn some different techniques. Your painting looks a little bit different than everybody else's. Plus, I'm not a good enough painter to make it exactly or where you need a pattern, that it has to be specific. So it's just kind of a fun, loose, different kind of brush strokes to create what we're doing tonight. All right, so I am putting a little bit of each color onto my palette. The two corals and the oranges, the beautiful yellow ochre, the light and the dark green, and then a little bit more of that vintage white if you don't still have that on your palette. You don't need a ton, and I always say you can add more to your palette. So that way you're not wasting any paint. All right, so you can apply a pattern, not exactly, but you can give yourself some confidence and some guidelines. You can use a piece of chalk, you can use a pencil. I just always say be really, really, really light-handed. And I'm actually going to do it with the white paint. So you can do it with the white paint. Know that I'm putting very little in my brush. I'm not using any water. So again, it's easy to cover up. And all we're doing is creating a pattern that kind of gives us placement. So it helps build our confidence. Let's see if I can do this. I'm going to bring this guy in here. So he's a circle and he's a circle. Always view him as a basic shape, not as a flower with, you know, a bunch of different petals. So if that is a circle, oh, let me get a little bit more so you guys can see it. I'm going to simply draw or paint a circle. Again, not thick, not crazy detailed, but just placement. And then this little guy is another circle. He's just a little bit smaller and he's a little bit lower. So I'm going to draw another circle. It's just making me confident about where I'm going to place my flowers. And then I'm like, so I know he's growing out of the line. So I'm going to just kind of connect him. Oh, I don't know if you guys can see that. I can see it. So I'm just going to kind of connect him, not with a straight line, because nothing in nature is a perfectly straight line. So just give it a little curve. It can go left, it can go right, but just give it a little movement. This little guy in my brain, I'm going to say, oh, he's kind of falling to the edge. So I'm going to connect him. I'm going to do a little thicker because I don't think you guys can see that. Looks funny for now, right? But it's just giving us confidence of where to place it. And then this long yellow flower. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start here, not a straight line, like I used a ruler. Give it a little curve. Don't draw all the petals because you don't need those. You're gonna paint those. And then the only other thing I'm gonna paint is I'm gonna paint this vine and this yellow flower. These we're just gonna freehand at the end, kind of as a filler. So this little guy, he kind of starts here and he curves the other way. So I'm just gonna place him with a line. Oh, maybe a thicker line so you guys can see it. And then this vine goes all the way from my line, kind of off the circle. Oh, you guys, it's so much thicker here. You guys can see that though, but it just builds confidence knowing that's going to become something, become beautiful flowers. And you guys, that's all you need to absolutely be able to place all of the elements of this design. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to start with the green. I'm using the smallest brush. I think it is a 1/8 inch. And again, no water. And I'm going to just go in that lighter green. And all I'm going to do, this is super simple, is I'm just going to trace that line that I've already created a pattern with. Now, if you guys want to go back and take that tape that you used and put it over your line, so you're placing it over the base coat. Just to protect that, you can, but you don't have to do that. So I'm just going to cover up that pattern that I created with the green. And I'm going to do that just on these two big round flowers. And then I'm going to do it over here on this that's going to become that really cute vine. I did it with the white first, or the pencil first, or the chalk first. Again, just so you kind of can see the elements without committing, because that I could easily sand off, or if it was chalk, I could wipe it off, or pencil, I could erase it. And then the green would be harder to get rid of. So now I'm committed. I'm going to do the same thing to what will become those yellow flowers. Not too thick, does not have to be perfect. We're just committing and covering up that line. And every now and then I'm going to dip that same brush. I'm not going to clean it, but I'm going to dip it into the dark green. So the light and the dark green both, sorry, when I paint, sometimes I talk slower. They both blend and create a little bit of shadow on your stems. All right, so then this guy is these little leaves. All I'm going to do is a dash mark where those leaves are going to be. Again, a way to create a pattern. Same thing here. I don't want them to be exact, like boom, 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 boom. So I'm going to go a little bit higher and kind of off the circle for that one. Then I'm going to skip an area, like that leaf is just not there. And I'm going to go to there. So that is just placement. And now I'm going to do a little leaf shape with that little tick mark being the center. The tick mark gives you confidence for placement, and then you go in and you paint it. It's just a more creative way to paint. It's a way to learn the brush strokes and not just be color book painting. Patterns are great and wonderful, but with a style of painting like this, you're learning so much more if you're kind of creating your own pattern and just having fun with the technique. So I did dip a little bit in that vintage white. I did not clean my brush in between. I'm basically bouncing back and forth between the light green, the dark green, and every now and then that vintage white. So I get all those different shades of green that'll just give my leaves all that dimension. I want a little bit darker on this side, so I'm going to go in there with the dark green, take away some of the vintage. No water, not too much paint really, because you can always add more, but you want all of those colors to just blend together. All right, then there is this big leaf, just kind of to give a large design element to your composition. So I'm going to go into that light green, and I think my leaf on this one, I'm going to kind of have fall and hug that way. So I drew a line, but then just like we did for these little leaves, now I'm going to go in and do a curved edge with that dash being in the middle, because that was just for placement. And now I'm going to fill it in. Same thing, bouncing between the light green and the dark green to give it all those different values. Okay, slowly but surely it's coming together. And you know what we might do, just because we're here? Over on this side, and we've already got green in our brush, I'm going to go into that dark green, and I'm going to do just a really thin vine. And then those little dash marks, all this will be placement for your leaves. It's so much easier to do that and then fill it in than to do a leaf, do a leaf, do a leaf, because then you either might overthink your spacing or it just might not come together at the end. Whereas you can always save or change a dash mark. You could even cover it up with one of your fabric flowers. But if you start painting the leaves, it's so much harder to correct. So dash mark, again, very irregular. Don't measure out your spacing. Don't make it exact. I'm going to skip a few down here. I'm going to angle a few in a different direction. And then you can kind of eyeball it, that you like it, that maybe you want one more. It's just an easy way, especially for a really basic leaf pattern like this. No water, guys. No water, one, because we don't need it. And two, we're working on this natural wood, so we don't want it to risk bleeding in the wood grain. So always make sure your brush is dry and just has paint. Even if you even if you wash the paint out with water, that's fine. But just really rub it a bunch on a paper towel and remove any excess water. And even too much paint. If you have too much paint on your brush, I always say roll it on your palette, because that will get all that extra paint out of the bristles and allow you to have that detailed edge again. Or that detailed, I guess, edge or tip of your brush. And then you're going to just simply fill them in. A little cute botanical vine like this works on everything. It just makes for such a great little element in any floral or vase or landscape. And don't overthink the shading and highlighting. Dip into that vintage white every now and then. And I even just clean my brush on a paper towel, no water. And then just a little dry brush of that vintage white will create a little shading or a little highlight where the sun would hit the leaf. So a really easy way to get all that dimension. Now, I'm going to do just a little bit of that dark green. And then this is the only time I'm going to add a touch of water to the dark green, but you guys, just barely a touch. Like dip your brush in the water, but then dip it on the paper towel and then mix just the tiniest bit of water in with that dark green. Not too much. The littlest bit of water just makes it move a little bit easier. And what I always say when you're connecting your leaves to your branch is start on the stem and go into your leaf. not the opposite. Because the opposite, you've got to stop. You've got to have a cold stop because otherwise you'll mess up your vine. But if you go from the vine into the leaf, you can create a detail or a center on your leaf. So always go from your leaf. Oh, let me scoot him. He's rocking. Or I'm sorry, from your stem into your leaf. Meow, meow. Cute. We're going to do the same thing over here, the tiniest, tiniest bit of water, and go from your stem into your leaf. Meow. All right, there's our little leaves. I'm going to add just a little bit of that vintage white to this big leaf just because I want to and I like it. I like the layers and layers of color. All right, so the little brush is done. Now you need a flat brush. And I think in the 7-piece set, there's an 8, a 6, a 10. I'm using a 10, but use whichever one that you're comfortable. And we will start on these 2 flowers. And all I'm doing is no water. I'm starting with that darker orange and I'm just loading that orange onto my brush. And on the outside edge of the circle, I'm just getting on that chisel edge and pulling towards the center of the flower. So chisel edge, oh, my hand's in the way. Chisel edge, just pull in. Just a simple straight stroke. Of course, covering up your pattern. And don't put them right next to each other. Don't make them exactly the same. We're not laying bricks. We're not building a house. So we want a little irregular edge. And we even want, like right there, the wood is coming through. We want that. Same with this little flower. We're just doing up on the chisel edge. Oh, let's see. I gotta move so you guys can see it. And then you just kind of sit down on the bristles and pull up. Sit down on the bristles and pull up. You're just creating that outside border. Don't clean your brush. And now I'm going into that coral. And I'm going to just overlap and do the same exact thing. Not lined up exactly, because remember, we're not laying bricks. That's funny that I say that. I had to paint brick today. So my mind wants to do perfect rows, but I'm not. See? Leave a little wood in between too. That's really, really pretty. And now, same brush, no water. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that vintage white and just kind of blend it together on my palette. And then I'm going to just continue. I'm overlapping the color I did before. And pick up a little bit more of the wicker white. Maybe a touch of that orange just to get another value. We're going to get so many colors and we're only using those 4 colors. Oh, no, those 3 colors. But the way you mix them and you add just a touch of either the vintage white or a touch of the orange is going to give you all of that detail. Never going in the water. If your brush feels really heavy with paint, just rub it once or twice on a dry paper towel. I'm loving this orange. So I'm going to get a little more of it and a little of the wicker white. You're going lighter to darker, but don't overthink it and worry that the shade is not light enough or it doesn't match the previous layer. Just have fun layering different shades of these 3 colors. And we're doing that exact same stroke as we get to the center. And then in the very center, I think I'm going to go back to that orange and a little bit of vintage white. And the same strokes, they get a little bit smaller, but they're absolutely the same stroke until you get in the center. And if you see a spot like this big flower, I love, he's perfect. This little flower, I want a little bit more of that fire coral. So I'm going to go right over it one more time, just to add a little bit more detail. and a different color. And just a few more strokes. You can keep layering them. The great thing about the folk art is it just blends so beautifully, and these colors complement so well that you never get a muddy color. So we've got this beautiful little mums. All right, same brush. I'm going to clean that in the water. Dry it always on your paper towel. And we're going to do that exact same stroke using the yellow and a little bit. Actually, get more vintage white if you need it. And instead of going in a circle, we're going to just go in a line. So here's one and here's one. And actually, if you want for this one, oh wait, I'm saying that and you guys can't see it. This one's a little bit bigger, so I'm going to do the exact same stroke. I'm going to use the chisel edge and I'm just going to pull and overlap and follow that vine. For this guy, he's a little bit smaller, so the difference is we were painting on the chisel edge. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to use the, what am I going to do? That's using the whole edge of the chisel edge. I'm only going to use the flat side. So instead of going like that, I'm going to have the chisel edge going up and down, and I'm going to just pull that onto the vine. So again, you're pulling onto the vine, and you're just alternating a little bit of vintage white, a little bit of mustard. It's not mustard, it is yellow ochre. And you're overlapping it, but don't cover up what you did before because you want all those different values of those two colors. Let the vine kind of peek through every now and then, but also cover it up because it's a little wildflower that's growing off of that vine. Then I'm back to over here where it's a bigger flower. So I'm going to use the whole tip and just keep layering that same simple stroke. And same thing, cover up the vine in some spaces, but if it shows in others, go all the way to the tape if you want to. All wildflowers are different, so make it exactly the way you like it. I love the vintage white, so I'm gonna get a little bit of that. But then my all-time favorite, mustard. But don't keep going over it and over it and over it too much, because then you'll get one solid color. You want that variety for sure. All right, so that's all of our painting. Isn't that fun and easy? Anybody can do that. You're really just doing one stroke. And now what we're going to do, we're going to have fun with the fabric elements that we cut out. So if you guys want to hit this with the blow dryer, I'm going to do it real quick. That's how quick acrylic paint dries. That's why I love working with it, because it's so easy to layer and layer and layer. So now grab all of your little fabric elements. Ones that you thought you loved, ones that you're not so sure if you're going to use, and just kind of lay them around your design. And just start getting a feel for what seems to make sense, what's something that is your favorite. Where's that one I cut that I love? Oh, here he is. I love this little yellow guy. I didn't use him the first time. All right, and then the same way that we applied the Paisleys, you just pick a design that you know you love and start with that. So I love these green leaves that I didn't use last time. I'm going to remove that tape because all that did was kind of protect and keep that line really straight. And then just painting on the back with Mod Podge. Doesn't have to be too heavy. Just start overlapping and adding some of these fabric elements to create another layer to your little fall floral bouquet and go right over your painted designs. The fabric looks so pretty on this natural wood. Where am I going to add him? I think I'm going to add him right there. Oh, you need a little bit more Mod Podge. You don't want it so thin that what just happened to me happens and it doesn't stick at all, but you don't want it so, you know, thick and gooey that you don't even see the design on the fabric. Mod Podge is truly magic. You can add pattern and texture to everything simply by using Mod Podge and fabric. And fabric lays down so nicely. There's no air bubbles to deal with. There's no wrinkles. You can reposition it if you put it down somewhere. Like, look, if I put that down, I'm like, ew, get him off. He stays wet long enough for you to really think about your design placement. And if you did like decide, ooh, I don't want him there, just simply rub it with your finger and that will dry and you won't see it and you won't have to start over on your project. So Mod Podge has got so much wiggle room to help you be creative. Ooh, this is my favorite one that had the little bit of yellow in it. I think I'm going to put him right there. I hope you guys are having fun. I haven't had any questions the whole class that's either good or bad. Hope good. You never know, right? It could just be me and you.
So far, it's been a lot of positive comments.
Yay. So let's see. I love him there. I think I might put another one up there. And that might be it for the design or the flower elements that I'm going to add. Ooh, maybe right there. And then for anyone that's joining us, I know I mentioned a little tip earlier, is I always recommend you paint, even whether it's paper, whether it's fabric, whatever you're working with. I love to apply Mod Podge to the back, apply your element, whether it's, you know, paper or fabric again, and then let it dry. And then once it's totally dry, because you know Mod Podge is a glue and a sealer and all of those magic things. Once that's dry, then top coat it with a full coat of Mod Podge because that seals everything in. It makes everything finished. It even seals your paint. That's a great way to finish it. But I always say do it after the layer that you applied your elements dries. But then go in and give it a good top coat to finish, seal, and just protect every part of your project. So you guys keep adding flowers, add some more tomorrow. If you just keep cutting and falling in love with that, add some more painted flowers. You could even add your last name, maybe your address, the word welcome. This is such a great way to kick off fall and add this maybe to your front door or to your kitchen wall. So do we have any questions, anyone?
It does not look like it.
Well, that I hope is a good thing. So you guys, thank you for joining us. Please post your project. We love to see what everyone creates. And I want to show you, so our next class will be Chris Williams. She teaches so many of our wonderful classes and she's a fabulous painter. So look how fun this is, kind of whimsy, kind of fun. I love the dark background and I love the bright colors. So join us next time. Get on the Michael's schedule. They've got all the classes listed for this month, actually probably through the holidays. And join us when Chris Williams teaches this really fun, whimsical floral on canvas. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye.